Uh,
This is fantastic, Brian. I can't, I just, words fail me.
well, that's good. I learned the hard way, so you don't have to. Okay. So using the knowledge of your camera's read noise and dynamic range, you're going to pick a starting point for gain. We went through that little exercise, and that was the audience participation. Hopefully you guys got that.
Brian, would you mind starting all over from the beginning?
No, what we'll do is we'll take my slideshow and Brian's slideshow, and we will post those to the group's IO.
And I'm not a friggin' genius. I'll show you all of the references at the end of this.
So much of this is something, it's not that hard. It just needed to be explained by somebody. As Feynman once said, if you can explain it in simple terms, you understand it.
Okay. Well, I made this for eighth graders, so I was good. If I made it for a 4-year-old, I'd have to go get one to explain it. Okay, so use read noise and dynamic range. Fantastic. That's a good way to start, and you guys know how to use that. Don't go into the part of the gain range where the read noise gets flat, because basically it's going to reduce your dynamic range. If it gets flat, you know, your dynamic range is going to be low. If it shows a step reduction like that one that we showed, best gain value may be just above that step reduction, which is what we figured out. If you're shooting with a mono camera, your luminance filter is always going to require a lower gain and offset than your RGB, your HA, your S silicon, and your oxygen filters. And you kind of saw what John Rista said, and he's the extraordinary expert. So I'm going to listen to him, and it works that way, anyways. Take some of these images. I mean, spend 10 minutes maybe when you're doing your imaging for the night, and do some visual analysis. Look for the noise on your subs. Look for what your dynamic range is and differences in details. I didn't get a chance to do much of that. It was so close, so cloudy when I was preparing this, but you'll probably see minor differences. You got to look for them, but you'll definitely see differences in detail. That's what I did notice. And detail is dynamic range. Start with an offset value, 1/5 or less of your gain, get your histogram, and then make sure the final offset value moves the histogram off that vertical axis. And then this is what I was saying before, make sure you take new bias, dark flats and flats with the new gain value and offset value for your session. I want to stop there. And any questions or comments?
So one comment is what will your sky give you that night?
Okay.
It has a lot to do with your gain and offset and all that.
I'm actually going to talk about that because
Good.
that's really critical.
Yeah, because that was part of my slide too, is part of the analysis when you start your imaging. Okay, what am I able to gain from the condition of the sky that night, whether it's hazy or cloudy or humid, moonlight, whatever.
It makes a huge difference. And the author of SharpCap did a wonderful presentation that is about an hour and a half long. I'll leave the link for you guys, but I'm going to distill it real quick for you guys. Okay. Dose reality gets to your point, Mark. So you don't just get the great photons from the target in your image. You get light pollution photons. You got to deal with read noise. There's something called dark noise, which is electronics when no photons are being detected. And that's why they got cooled cameras. You cool it way down and you reduce that dark noise. And then there's shot noise, which is our talk that we had the other day. And I forget the fellow's name from Fermi. Those are the photons. That's a shot noise he was catching on his Geiger count. It wasn't Geiger counter. It was some kind of counter. So anyways.
And can I make a comment about that? The recommendation is when you do your dark frames is do a median instead of an average, because then it'll get rid of those any gamma rays that are stuck on a individual dark frame. And if you don't do that right, that information is going to be taken away from your light frame.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a technique of how you do your master frames as well.
Mm-hmm.
He was detecting cosmic rays.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Cosmic, yeah, that's right.
You see the cosmic ray shots I get them all the time on mine.
Yeah. Anyways, so we can't do much about light pollution. You can go to a dark site. You can do some things to reduce noise. So there's a fellow that wrote SharpCap. His name is Dr. Robert Glover. And he figured out that there is an optimal length of subs that maximize dynamic range and reduce noise. And there's a ton of math in it, but it boils down to this. 10 times the read noise squared divided by your light pollution rate. So the read noise we said before was electrons. Light pollution is electrons per pixel per second. That's it. That's kind of his secret. And he comes up with some interesting stuff here. So first, Mark, this kind of gets to your point. What's the light pollution rates given your Bortle zone that you're in? So, this is based on a mono sensor, so everything's nice and pure. You don't have to do anything yet, but I'll show you how to correct it for color and for all your narrowband stuff. So, for example, let's take a scope. You're at f6. You get in the Bortle 5, you're going to get 2.6 electrons per pixel per second. That's the way that works. Let's say you're in the inner city, you get pounded with 78 electrons per pixel per second. And you go out to the sweetest dark site in the world, and it's 0.36 electrons per pixel per second. So that's part of the formula. Remember, it was this guy back here. So you had to figure out the light pollution rate. And then knowing that just figure, and he figures in a 50% quantum efficiency, 3.75 micron pixels. Now, think about it. You're going to filter out some of the effect of those if you got any filters in. So for RGB, you divide by 3. So this number would be divided by 3. It'd be less than 1. For narrowband, you divide by 25. That's how much it reduces it. And that's a 12 nanometer. But if you got if you got a 3 nanometer, you actually reduce it by 100. So you can really take longer, think about it, you can take longer images, longer subs, and not get as affected by light pollution given these. So that's why narrowband is cool. It filters out a bunch of stuff. So that's the light pollution piece. Now, can you figure out of that what's an optimum sublength? And he did this. So you got to kind of go for this. If you got different types of read noise, in this case, he says, okay, for 2.5E read noise, you can use the black numbers, and red for 7E read noise. So there's a significant difference even in one Bortle zone for these. But look at the differences here. For a color sensor, you multiply by 3, so you can actually take or can take an optimal sub by multiplying these numbers by 3. So let's say you're in Bortle 5 and you're at f6 and you've got low read noise on your camera and you have a mono lume filter. Your ideal, and this is in seconds, your ideal number of seconds for the sublength without gaining anything else is 24 seconds. If you have a color filter, you're up to about 75 seconds, ideally, you're going to need. And then if you got narrowband, look at this. I mean, if you're at 3 nanometer narrowband, what's that, 2400? So that's your 60, you're taking 10-minute subs, 10 to 15. That would be a optimal amount in order to get the optimal sub length and get the best ratio of read noise to dynamic range. So this isn't something you have to memorize necessarily. He put it all into SharpCap. So users of Sharp, and I'm not trying to sell SharpCap, but users of SharpCap, they can quantify their camera, and he will apply this math to your camera and tell you what your sub lengths should be for the type of filters that you have.
Is that on the paid version or the?
It actually is, you can characterize it in the free version, but it doesn't automatically do it for you until you get the paid version.
Yeah.
I don't have SharpCap, but
Okay.
I've taken a look at this chart and tried it, and I didn't want to like spend all night comparing, but the images I get, the subs I get rather, seem to be okay. It's off with my gain and offset. They're off the left side barely enough to where, you know, you're getting, you know, the deep small amount of data, and you're getting a large amount of data. So yeah, the calculation, and it's not necessarily intuitive, but stick with me here. But so you use that telescope at f6, you get RGB filter, same thing, 50% read noise 2. Okay, you're in the Bortle 7, which I'm on the edge of. You do the math, and it comes out to 20 seconds. If you're in Bortle 5, you'd be able to do 72 seconds without getting nailed with a whole bunch of noise from light pollution. And if you're in a Bortle 7, 3 nanometers, you could actually go up to 651 seconds. There's your 10-minute sub, which is what I typically do. I do between 7 and 10-minute subs, and I'm kind of in a Bortle 6. And they seem to get the information I need, and are off the left side, and are not super saturated.
So can I bring in a couple, 3 other factors?
Yeah.
So for every one of these 651 second exposures, you need dark frames,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you have to factor in how long is it going to take you to take dark frames that night.
Mhm.
Second thing is, how good is your guiding? Your guiding may have drift over the 651 seconds, where maybe a shorter. The third thing is air traffic that ruins your subs. And so you have to have some place, okay, how much am I willing to give up a ruined sub in my 2 hours, 5 hours worth of, right? So as a matter of practice, my subs are usually 5 minutes.
Mhm. You always,
And here it's in Lombard, right? So I know it's going to guide well for that long.
Mhm.
And it's usually, you know, 12 of them are an hour. And if an airplane comes through one of them, I still have 11 good ones
Sure.
over an hour. So those are the other factors that you have to figure out. Yeah, the optimal is 651. I agree with that. But do I want to lose a 651 second exposure because of other errors? So
Yeah.
that's the balance you have to come up with.
Yeah, and it's real world. And you have to remember what I didn't give you was his background. He's got a master's in physics, got a master's in math. These are all numbers that he cranked out. Yep. With probably a pocket full of assumptions. Your mileage may vary, but I thought it was useful to talk about it for the reason that Mark brought up, is you got to take this into account.
And can I say one more thing? Go back to the other slide. So that 3 nanometer narrowband filter is very expensive versus a 7 or 9. So what are you going to get out of it? And if you're at Bortle 7, you don't need a 3 nanometer, because you're not you should get a shorter or a longer wavelength and cut down on your exposure time.
I mean, I've had 7 nanometer ones that I got from ZWO along with the camera, and I got the threes. And when the night's good, the threes work really
Yep,
nice. When the
for
night
sure.
seems not so bad, not so good rather, they
Right.
suck.
Well, then
Yeah.
I have two different wavelengths. I can tell the difference between the two.
Yeah,
But Brian, like you say, you need to have excellent conditions to reap the benefits.
yeah, absolutely. All right. So one thing he did point out, I thought this was pretty good to show, was, you're sitting in this his magical optimal sub-exposure length. He calls it recommended. In this one, he doesn't call it optimal, but if you don't um, if you don't follow that, and you say you're at 1/10 of it, you're going to get noise in your sax, and actually, it kind of makes sense, right? But what he did point out, and this one surprised me a little bit, is, and there's a trade-off here too. You take 1,000 images, which I did the other night, actually. Probably didn't need to. And it's diminishing returns. You don't really get much improvement in reduction of noise by the more subs you take. So it's like, you keep stacking until, oh my God, if I make 1,000,000 subs, I'll get the best, lowest noise you're gonna ever get. Well, according to him, it's not true. I know the more I stack, the better it looks. I haven't gone out to 10,000 ever, but who knows? But anyways, that's his thought, and yeah, he's probably right. Now you can cheat. I was talking about this before. So I don't have SharpCap. I just got the free version. Excuse me. So I did do the SharpCap sensor analysis, and this is actually my camera. And remember I think the mean was 139. Sorry, unity gain was 139. Well, here it is. It's somewhere in this chart. If you charted it out, it would probably look like that curve. And lo and behold, it's probably somewhere between there, and it's probably somewhere near 139. So that part works. This part is the cheat, where you get to characterize every filter and every camera that you got, and it will give you, if you look here, it says optimal exposure and optimal gain and number of exposures and all that good stuff. And you just click apply, and it'll set up the imaging for the night for you. So you do this every night before your session with his software, and it should give you this optimal stuff. Frankly, to me, it's overkill, but it's kind of a cool thing. If you don't want to know anything about anything and just click a button, you'll get this cool stuff. All right, that's all I got.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I did say I got references, so these are good things to take a look at. I used a lot of these in putting together a presentation. All right.
And here's another book.
That one's a great book. Yeah.
So you can see I got a mini dog here. So I didn't remember to record from the beginning. So Brian, if you don't mind, and I'll do it myself too, is I'll post the PowerPoint and some of the other things I'll print out and add to the PowerPoint, those other frames that I did.
Should I
That's
email?
fantastic. I can use all of this.
Yep.
Great.
So I'm going to say a couple things. When I went to pick out my S-Big camera, the 8XE, I did a lot of research, like he was talking about with the well capacity and all that kind of stuff, the pixel size for my sky, the whole thing. And I ended up with the 8XE because there were other cameras available that were more sensitive, but there wouldn't be any good where I live. It'd be way too sensitive, right? and same thing with the bandwidth of the filters. And so I bet I spent the first 2 or 3 years almost exclusively with hydrogen alpha, learning all of these nuances before I went to the red, green, blue color filter stuff. Because I needed to, what Brian was talking about, I needed to learn that kind of stuff and get it in my mind because I was so left over from the film age, right? You have to change your thinking. And that was a big step for me to get leave film behind and get to the electronic stuff.
Right. And the whole concept of mono versus one-shot color, it's a huge change in mono, but you do reap benefits.
Well, that was one of my major decisions because the SBIG had a very nice color camera, right? But again, around here in Lombard, it wouldn't do me any good. So I needed the narrow band ability with the entire sensor
Yeah.
collecting that one wavelength. So red, green, blue. Now I have the whole entire sensor in that channel versus the Bayer array, where you're gathering all red, green, and blue, but you're also gathering everything else. Versus cutting it down, because you can buy those red, green, blue filters, and it has all the luminance blocking or the light pollution blocking part of that too. So, yeah, it just took me a long time and a lot of patience, and also getting the work process down, because that was one of the things that if I think Bob, you were at some of those with Andy at Batavia Library, and that's one of the things I brought up is to have a work process for this. So you're doing the same thing every time, and so when there's a mistake, you can figure out where you made the mistake, right? Or I did something out of sequence, and how come it didn't come out that night? And so now I have my routine where I set it up, I cool the camera down, I calibrate my guiding and all that stuff, and when that's done, I stick the camera on a star and guide on that. For the half hour, I take my dark frames. And by the time I'm ready to go, everything is kind of like calibrated together and I'm ready to go with it. So,
But why is it that a mono camera gives you much better detail, better results?
the
best
mono,
way, I was going to say the best way I know how to describe that is there's 4 pixels grouped in to take that color. If you remember, if you
That's one
spread out
theory.
the photons over the 4,
Yeah.
you're going to cut your dynamic range by 1/4.
Okay, but on top of that, and I kind of like hit on this and wondered about it when I was watching all these Christopher Go videos about imaging Jupiter and Saturn.
That's
He's
different.
taking 4 times the amount of data than someone with a color camera is taking, because he's doing like the subs for each color.
right?
Mhm.
So he's not, and with a color camera, you might be taking 20 minutes worth of subs. Well, in order to do that with the mono, you've got to take your 30-second videos 4 times or 3 times at least for blue, red, and green. So that's much more data than little lowly color camera guy is taking.
It depends what your sensitivity is on the camera itself. That's one of the factors, but then the other one too is being able to do that. You might only need to take a quarter of the time or a third of the time or a half of the time for each filter than you did with the whole image of the color.
I agree with that.
So it's a little bit longer all the time, but again, the benefits outweigh the
Well,
problem.
I'm starting to wonder if on top of all that, for Jupiter specifically, you need the atmospheric dispersion corrector. Otherwise, you're still going to be fuzzy.
I can do a planetary talk. I learned the hard way on that too.
But
But you're right. But the only time you need that really is when it's low in the sky. If it's up at the zenith, forget the ADC. You'll never use it.
I don't think I'll ever see a planet up in the zenith.
Jupiter was up there in August, so
It's close. But
I've been using-
so I wonder if the deep sky images with the mono is the same thing, because you're taking 4 times the amount of data that someone with a color camera would take. Right? You're
You're
doing
right.
red, green,
Yeah,
blue.
and
And
well,
then luminance.
but then you have the entire sensor. The entire sensor is the same color. So yeah, you have 4 times the amount of information on
At
each
least.
sub. And again,
Yeah,
that's
and then-
why I decided to do with the mono camera,
Right.
because you could take an hour picture of the Orion Nebula with a color camera. You could take a 4-hour picture of the Orion Nebula with the red, green, blue luminance or narrowband. Which one will give you the better picture? You have 4 hours of information versus 1 hour. You come up
Yeah.
with a color image. So again, how much time do you have to do that, right?
It's a trade-off.
And what will your sky give you for the color? Because you have 2 green, 1 red, 1 blue on each of the 4 pixel. So if you're looking for, it's kind of like using Fujichrome versus Ektachrome film. Fujichrome red, Ektachrome blue.
Well, when you look at some of the work list that's used to create some of these deep sky images, like that last comparison that Andy sent out, where
Right.
it was the 2 filters that were compared. Well, when you go and look at the thing and he tells you all the steps that he took to take the images, not only does he have like 100 hours of integration, but he's got all these steps that nobody would even think of. Right?
You're talking about processing after he gets the
That
stuff?
too, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the different steps. It's
Yeah.
Well, okay. So remember the list of files that I showed you of my calibration frames and then my
Yeah.
light frames of Veil. To get what I want, that's what I needed to do.
when I first got into the hobby, I was dumb enough to think that there's some guy like a Mark Christensen or a Mark Wagner that took one snapshot and wow, you got this great image. And then you find out that it's like a multi-hour adventure, and then you got a process on top of it.
But
It's just,
okay. So
Oh my God.
this is my okay. I like the art of doing that. I like the hobby of doing that. I like to build it. Let's put it that way. Versus a snapshot with a C star. Nothing against the C star, but I like to do all this. I like to sit out there and watch the telescope guide. I like to watch the little graph of how well it's guiding. Okay,
you're
I'm
in the
sorry.
right hobby.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, why would I do it? I want to be out there doing it.
Yeah.
And by the
So
way,
each of us has our own niche they want to fill, and their own itch they want to fill on how to do this.
As of today, I cannot do like the 10-hour integration of the horse head. I got to do like, I think I'm a 1 hour max kind of guy.
But
So-
see, Greg, I did the in between. I take an hour of each channel if it's red, green, blue.
Oh my
An
God.
hour of each channel if it's the Hubble palette. So that's 3 hours per 3 hours per. Maybe
Well-
if I'm doing a red, green, blue hydrogen alpha, it's 4 hours per object.
And then you're going to be cheating with Pix Insight on top of it.
I haven't done that yet. I haven't
not
done that yet, so don't say that.
you should see,
I'm trying to find. Hey, I bought a new computer, okay, and Andy and I do like a little an hour or so, and I pulled up one of my M101 subs, and we put everything in there, and it ran so fast on this new computer. He was giggling like a little girl. Oh, look at it! He couldn't believe how fast it went. That's the only reason why I'm going with Pix Insight. I want something that does my stuff that I do fast.
I think.
Okay,
it'll-
I'm not going to spend
Yeah.
40 hours on an image processing. I want to spend less time.
Yeah.
And if I
you
can
build
set up
these-
a project in Pix Insight and put that list of stuff in that I
Yeah.
have for sale, that's
Yeah.
what I'm going to do tomorrow and see how long it takes to do that versus the other way I did it.
Yeah, it's a list of stuff. Eventually, you won't even know what the hell it is or what it does. All you know is you drag your thing over on your video or your picture. Boom, magic happens.
That's called C-Star.
No, no, PixInsight is
Called
the
cheating.
digital version of C-Star.
No, but that's what C-Star does. You don't have to do anything. You press the button and it gives you an image.
You got to get a credit card.
And I'm not saying anything against C-Star or any of those because I'm thinking
Mark's-
about if I buy one,
stretching the
it's going to be
truth.
that dwarf one.
You're stretching the truth a little because you're not out there snapping shots every, 3 minutes. Computer's doing that for you, right? So it's trade-offs. You like the hobby, you set it up that way, it's going to do what you want to do. The other thing I wanted to mention too was Hubble has same subs, takes the same darks, and if you look at the subs from Hubble or Webb, they are crap. Especially Hubble. It's got a bunch of noise on it. It's got
Yeah.
dust, it's got dust motes, it's got donuts everywhere. They process the crap out of that using something very similar to PixInsight.
Exactly.
So it's not, to me, it's not cheating. It's doing what you need to do to clean it up, get rid of all that crap, and put a little bit of art into it, and that's what they do. And that's what I enjoy.
I'm mostly joking.
It's pulling
when I
the
say
data
it's
out of the
cheating,
image.
but
Yeah, and pulling data out of
Right.
what looks like a very light sub.
that the thing that gets me the most about PixInsight, and I guess you don't need PixInsight for this, is to separate the stars from the nebula.
I will never do that.
If
That's
I could
what
do that on my
I do it all the
images,
time. See,
I'd be golden.
that's how I.
I will
Yeah.
never do that, Greg.
I don't say
On
that.
my right hand. Or
Don't
left.
say that.
No,
Yeah.
I have no
Don't say
desire
that.
to do that.
There's a lot of image. I'm not going to name any names, but there are some images that have come through the club's mailing list that I'm like, stars are too sharp. They need to be a little fuzzy, like what you got going on Brian's.
That's
Yeah.
what's called
Background there.
convolution.
Yeah, you
Right,
can't
the convolution.
you
That's-
can't
This
have
is
like
why they call
overly
it,
sharp
why I
stars.
call it astroportraiture,
Some
because
some of
it's
it
an
is.
art.
Some of it is.
Yeah, the stars look like flat dots as like yeah, I know it's supposed to be going on there, but
You get a
y-
good triplet, and they will be sharp pinpoints, and you don't have to do anything. The SCT I got, the 9.25, they get bloated.
But see,
Especially
Greg, the deconvolution also compensates for tiny guiding errors.
true too. Yeah.
yeah, I was reading that the edge gets bloated stars.
Brian, I've got a question.
Yeah.
When the well fills up,
hmm
there is spillover to the adjacent pixels.
It's not like a true well. What I mean,
Yes, it does.
no, it doesn't. Not unless you got a color.
Let me see if I can find an example.
That saturation is at a pixel level, not at a sensor level. So what one sensor does doesn't affect, one pixel doesn't affect the one next to it. However, if one pixel is getting saturated, bottom line is probably a whole bunch next to it are getting saturated as well, unless they're super, super big pixels. And then they might just be getting that photon.
Isn't
from
a
that part of the
pixel a
image.
well?
What's that?
I'm
Isn't a
not talking
pixel a well?
pixel, I'm talking the electron. When the well fills up, the
Mhm.
electrons in there have nowhere to go when the next pixel hits.
Right,
Doesn't the electron?
it maxes out, but you were saying, do they spill out over to the adjacent pixels?
It
Yes,
gotta
they
go
do.
somewhere. Gotta go
Yes, they
somewhere.
do. I'm trying to find an
That's
example of that.
That's what the lens is for, though. Anyways, I'm
No,
talking.
no, I have an issue with my sensor. And very bright stars have a halo around them. Not like the halos around your stars,
Mhm.
which is obviously photons spilling over from either out of focus or just too many, I don't know. But I'm trying to find out whether I've got a problem with my optical system or my sensor itself.
Yeah.
And if there's something wrong with the sensor, perhaps the voltage, the number of electrons overwhelms the insulation between the two pixels. But that would still be very localized to the adjacent 4 pixels.
Yeah, the sensor I have in the 1600 has lenses over each pixel. And there's in a very bright light situation, the lenses propagate the photons across. So if that's what you're talking about, that's possible.
No, I'm worried about electronic well, call it noise. If it's electrons coming in from the pixel next door, that's noise.
Yeah, I guess you call it noise. Yeah. But the
Well-
halos, for me, it's always related to the filter.
Yeah, the halos are filter.
Okay.
But Bob, I know what you're talking about because it happens to me a lot on the. I'm trying to find an example of it here.
I don't think CMOS, you're talking about CCD or CMOS?
CCDs, yeah.
Yeah, CCD.
These are different. Now, I don't know
Different, okay.
about CCDs. I know a lot about CMOS because I've run into.
Wait a minute, no, I'm talking about CMOS, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Halos and the halos you're seeing are not your sensor.
I think the word is bloom.
If it's bloom in the
You know, way overloaded. I'm
Are you
not
talking about that defect there?
No.
Yeah, no, that's
This one
CCD.
right here.
Yeah, that's a CCD. That's
Right, but that's the
from
well
reading,
overflow.
yeah.
But that's the well, it's
Yeah.
the well overflowing.
Yeah, that's what it looks like on CCD, but on CMOS, what does that look like?
I don't know.
It's probably similar. I would think because
His stars look like halos around the dot.
it's now when you stack it, especially when you're maxed out over 1,000 subs or 100 subs or whatever, it's going to look schmeary.
Well, yeah, but mine are like maybe 30 pixel diameter.
And
That to me seems like it's
Halos,
halos, yeah.
that's could be
On every star, not just the brightest stars, but every star.
It's most pronounced on the brightest ones, but even the ones that just barely beginning to show
Yeah.
up also have it.
what camera do you have?
I've got a Vespera, you know, the Tic Tac, the white Tic Tac, like the Sea Star.
So I think that's what's called an IMX 519 sensor.
It's a 460 or something like. It's an IMX 400. Yeah, 462. That's it.
Yeah.
Those got a different Bayer matrix. You got to be careful with those. You got to set that up properly. So they are let me remember what it is. It's not GRGB. It's some other Bayer arrangement.
Aha.
If you're not processing for that, that might cause a problem. But bottom line is halos are typically filters or a sensor getting some dew on it or your lens getting dew on it. That's what
Right.
I've found. And I've had all,
Exactly.
I know
Yeah.
them all.
Yeah. And I've been through this. It's not it's not due on the lens. I
Okay.
suspect it's something inside the optical train.
It could be.
Which is
And
not
and
user
optical
research.
rather than electrical, which, you know, I'm just trying to
Packages.
Occam's razor down to the most
Flat frames,
simple.
flat frames, flat frames, flat frames.
I don't think it's a flat frame thing.
I think, does Vespera do the flat frame thing for you?
Not yet. It's not, all the stuff is in their software, you know, the Bayer matrix and all that. They invented it. They wrote the software for it. They've got the Bayer down straight.
Okay.
I've had some trouble with the Bayering with some of my post processing because the stacker makes a bad decision.
Mhm.
And but if you key in what it really is, then it's
fine.
okay.
Yeah.
But I still have this thing, and I think you know, I'm happy to hear that you agree that you've seen it on a filter strain, and not just dual, because I know it's not.
Yeah.
I have a suspicion that when they were building it, the smoke got on the glass inside the camera.
I would send it back. It's probably, is it still in warranty?
Oh yeah, I'm working with them right now,
Give
you
it
know,
back.
and they're telling me, that's due on the lens. Well, just last Friday, I took some pictures of the lens when I was done, and you can actually see the sensor way down in the back there. It's not dewed up, and it's creating these things. So yeah,
How
I'm
much-
working with them, but I'm just trying to understand it so that I can have talking points when I actually have to go elbow to elbow and wrist wrestle these guys to take it back.
Mhm.
How much did you say it would cost to send it back to France?
Yeah, you know, that's the other thing I'm working on. I'm gonna try to get them to pay, and I'll reimburse them for, because they get a much better rate at bulk than I would get sending it back to France. It's in the range of $100, you know, and that's each way. So, you know, I'm looking at maybe just buying a new one or a C-Star.
Yeah, C-Star. Yeah. That's-
Actually, after this talk, I'm thinking about getting out my complicated rig.
Basically, this
Mhm.
entire talk was wasted on you. Okay.
No, not at all. I really would rather be doing it, but but there's a difference between reading a medical textbook and curing a patient. And tonight that's why I'm so thrilled with your explanations, because you didn't tell me anything I didn't already know, but what you did is you gave me the perspective and the background.
Good.
And
So
the-
I want to ask John, you're the one that asked about gain and offset. Was this helpful?
Yeah, I think it was very helpful, especially the offset part.
Mhm.
I mean, I already knew about the unity gain and everything I read with the offset for my cameras. They have it at 30. I just don't think those numbers were right, at least the 30. But
Now
I
you-
am going to try that on Sharp Cap to test out the sensor.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Well, from my point of view, I've got a Canon DSLR,
Mhm.
and the Canon and Backyard EOS are two. Canon has a software that drives it, and Backyard EOS use their SDK to drive it.
Mhm.
And I think SharpCap may very well be able to do this with my sensor in my DSLR. So one of the next few things I'm going to do is do some testing and see if I can put this to use. I never knew about the what was it, the term for the basis, the
Offset?
by offset, the offset. Yeah.
Yeah.
That right there, I never knew what that was. Never.
I didn't know until I finally dug into it. I was
I heard of it. I didn't see any point in it, but I heard of it. You know, now I see the point. Excellent. I'm happy. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, the next thing to figure out is binning. I've been looking at the astronomy tools calculator,
Mhm.
because that's where you could put in your telescope, your sensor, and all that, and it'll tell you if you should be binning or not, depending on the sky condition. You know, if it should be 1 by 1, 2 by 2, or whatever. So I've been messing with that to make sure I'm in the right zone.
Mhm.
But now I need some clear nights so I could actually do something.
Yeah, that's the problem this time of year, to get 2 or 3 consecutive nights so you can make progress, right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Okay,
Thanks.
well,
It's been real helpful.
Yeah, for sure. The next meeting we got is March 20th. I have on my calendar. So I'll send out, that this was recorded, and then we'll put our PowerPoints on the group's IO site.
Do I have access to the file area, or do I need to send it to you?
Well, send it to me, and then I'll make a folder out of the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then we'll just have to solicit what kind of information we want to exchange next time. Maybe next time, how I'll ask some of these guys that didn't come today that asked about it, what do you need to know from the beginning type thing. Maybe we'll do that next time. So also a reminder that next week, get my calendar, the 28th, we have the ATM Zoom meeting for amateur telescope making, and then on March 6th on smart telescopes. And we'll see if this, continues. By the way, the April S&T has a review of the Unistellar's rig. So this is the second one they have. The first one was on C-Star a couple months. And by the way, that was the guy that wrote that article, is the guy I talked to at FVAS about these things. So interesting to read it. Anyway, thanks for coming.
Yep.
I'll stop recording.